Ladies and gentlemen, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia just did something that tells the whole world change is on the way. All right, folks, let's get into this one. I got to tell you, this is a big deal. This story is no small thing. And I have to say that when most people read this headline, they're not going to make the connection that I want you to make after listening to the things that I have to say. And here's the reason why. Anytime a world leader decides that they're going to postpone a trip or divert their plans or change their direction of travel or do something slightly different, no one ever thinks anything about it. They oftentimes think about issues related to security. They think about things related to just the busyness of the schedule of the person that's actually going to meet. And so if the Crown Prince were to simply say that he was diverting his direction, he was going somewhere else, or he was making a different plan because something in his busy schedule sort of drove him to that place, nobody would think anything of it. But this is very different, okay? And I'm going to tell you why. Let's look at the title of this story, and I'll tell you why this is such a massive, massive deal. The title of the story here is Saudi Crown Prince MBS postpones visit to Japan due to King's health. Now, the little subtitle in the story says, Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud was set, that's a long name, by the way, was set to pay an official visit to Japan from the 20th to the 23rd of May. Now, by the time you're watching this, that visit should have just been concluded, but the prime minister decided that he is not going to do this. By the way, we oftentimes don't call him the prime minister, even though he is the prime minister of Saudi Arabia. He is, in essence, the crown prince. He is the person that will be the next king of Saudi Arabia. But why this is significant, and it should be significant to you if you think about the geopolitics of the region and what's going on with Saudi Arabia, is Saudi Arabia has made it very clear that it is their goal to become an economic superpower. As a matter of fact, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has actually stated on numerous occasions that it is his goal to bring Saudi Arabia back into the economic superpower that it used to be. And actually, he's not satisfied with it becoming what it used to be. He wants it to become greater than it was. As a matter of fact, the Crown Prince has even recently in national media said that he aims to actually bring the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia into the G7. And that has been his goal, because what he wants to do is he wants to build up on a much grander scale the status of Saudi Arabia, specifically in the area of economics, because when we look at everything that's going around the Arabian Peninsula, you'll understand that economic strength is what gives them the most power to be able to do the things that they seek to accomplish. As a matter of fact, that's what drives the normalization agreements that are going on right now. That's what drives their stand in wanting to defend Israel. That's what drives the new recent rule that they made regarding putting down what happened on October the 7th with respect to Israel defending themselves. This is why they've changed a lot of their policy very quickly and very visibly, because they are gunning to be a part of the G7. Now, I want to sort of take this a step further. It must have taken a tremendous amount of effort and a whole lot of maneuvering politically and a whole lot of energy to put together a meeting with Japan. And so the idea that the Crown Prince would walk away from a meeting with Japan, even if it was a delay for a later time, is something that is literally unthinkable. It's a type of thing that you would never think could happen, because if his goal is to become a member of the G7, throwing away a meeting with Japan is literally one of the most detrimental things you can do, especially if you've spent a lot of time gaining access to the possibility of even having that meeting. Why? Well, let's think about this for just a second, folks. There are many members of the G7. Let's talk about who those members are. We've got Canada, France, Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom, the United States, of course. And guess what? Japan is the 7th member of the G7. And one of the things that we have to understand is that if you are going to bring yourself into the fold of the G7, it's critically important that you speak to one of the member states that actually is more economically strong than some of the other member states, because the possibility of being able to bring yourself into that place, especially with the intent of becoming an economic superpower and strengthening the organization that drives the collective strength for unilateral movement or multilateral movement, you would want to be in a meeting with Japan, especially if you are the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. This is a big deal. So let me read what this says. And this article is really important. We should pay attention to this. It says this. It says, due to the Saudi king's health issues, the visit of the Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud to Tokyo. Look at that. Isn't that funny? Let's just take a moment to just laugh at me for just one moment. We're not going to edit this because this part's kind of funny, right? I can say without a problem, Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud, but I can't say Tokyo. Let me reread this. Let me reread the line to you, folks. I just have to keep that in there so you can laugh at me. We're not editing it, right? It says, due to the Saudi king's health issues, the visit of the Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud to Tokyo, which was set to begin on May 20th, has been postponed, the Japanese Foreign Ministry said today. By the way, it's the Japanese Foreign Ministry that's making the announcement, not the actual Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That's even more significant. And it's even more important to think about this, right? Look at what the ministry said. The foreign ministry says this. Here's the quote. His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud, Crown Prince and Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, was scheduled to pay an official visit to Japan from 20th to 23 of May. The quote goes on to say, on late night of May 19th, the government of Saudi Arabia informed the government of Japan that His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed visit needed to be postponed due to the health condition of the custodian of the two holy mosques, His Majesty King Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud. The expected visit of His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed will be coordinated between the two countries. And that's the quote that he left. The article goes on to say that the Saudi king was hospitalized for a medical exam. It says, the Saudi royal court announced on May 19th that King Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud was undergoing a medical examination at the royal clinics of Al Salam Palace in Jeddah, having experienced a high fever and joint pain. The custodian of the two holy mosques, Salman, will undergo medical examinations today, May 19th, at the royal clinics of Al Salam Palace in Jeddah due to high fever and high joint pain. The medical team will conduct tests to diagnose his condition and monitor his health. This is really interesting because this is the state-run press agency that's giving this announcement, right? So this is a very metered, very sort of well-orchestrated announcement that's being made, and it's exactly what they're saying. And it goes on to say, it was then reported that the king had a lung infection and will take antibiotics. So this is very interesting because they understand that there is a very serious health condition going on right now with the king. Now, we don't know what this means. We don't know if it means that the king is, God forbid, about to die. We don't know if it was just a very serious close call. The crown prince decided that he was going to, take things in a different direction in the abundance of caution, but it is a substantial thing. And it signals the fact that we could see Mohammed bin Salman become the king of Saudi Arabia sooner than we actually think. And if that ends up happening and he becomes the king of Saudi Arabia, then we will undoubtedly begin to see the globalist movements taking place that will contribute to the environment that we read about in the world of Ezekiel 38. This is a significant deal for another reason, and that is the fact that the crown prince has a very, very strong desire to want to see economic growth take place within Saudi Arabia at the expense of many of the traditional sort of values that has been carried in past administrations. And that becomes really important to understand, because when we begin to see the environment of Ezekiel 38 begin to build, you will see the type of peace initiatives take place that will set Dedan and Sheba up to take the stand that they do when we know that Gog, presumably the leader of Russia from the region of Magog, is going to come and attack Israel. Now, this also has a lot to do with the type of things that we're seeing beginning to form geopolitically, not just in the Arabian Peninsula, but also in Northern Africa and, of course, Asia Minor and some of these other places as we start looking at the Persian Gulf and some of the things that are going on. This also has a lot to do with what we are going to see happening in southern Iraq when we start looking at the potential of the building of the city of Babylon. We know that there's a lot of effort being made right now, and Saudi Arabia has a lot to do with it, especially because of the independent economic, for lack of a better term, unilateral efforts that are being made right now by Iraq to be able to create the infrastructure necessary to support the trade routes that they want to build coming out of Babylon. And Saudi Arabia wants a piece of that action. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on here, and this could signal some pretty big change. By the way, we have to talk about the fact that the president of Iran is dead, and so is the foreign minister. And with the president of Iran being dead and the foreign minister, this puts Iran in limbo a little bit. And with Iran being in limbo, that means Saudi Arabia's ability to effect change in their negotiation with Kuwait changes all kinds of things for what happens in southern Iraq. It can also change a lot with what happens along the Euphrates going further south and potentially creating a canal or a way into, of course, the Persian Gulf, which could open up another trade route possibility when we start talking about things coming from India or Pakistan or places like that. So you have to understand what we're talking about here is pretty significant. There's a lot of things happening all at the same time that could open up some really unique doors that should cause us to keep our eyes open and pay attention to all of these stories. Now, I do want to simply say this. This becomes spectacularly important when we look at what we know is going to happen in the last days, okay? Let's go over this quick list of what we know is coming in the last days that is actually important as it relates to this subject that we're looking at right now. Number one, we know that Saudi Arabia will be friendly to Israel. As a matter of fact, Saudi Arabia, although they will not get involved militaristically speaking, according to what we read in Ezekiel 38, will be vocal dissenters to what Russia is doing with the conglomerate of nations that attack Israel. In order for that to happen, they have to have a pretty significant agreement with one another. But what also Ezekiel 38 tells us is that all of these nations appear to be friends, and what MBS is doing right now in Saudi Arabia is creating a very large multilateral effort to create these types of normalization agreements that will bring economic prosperity and strength to not just Israel, but all over the region, which will prove to be very, very beneficial. Now, of course, that's not going to be enough to keep Russia happy or Libya happy or many of these other countries that we read about in Ezekiel 38, right? So many of them that are going to go and are going to attack Israel. And actually, if you're interested in seeing what that looks like, let me show you this map again so that you can see it, right? We're going to see Russia attack. We're going to see Turkey attack. We're going to see Libya attack. We're going to see Sudan attack. We're actually going to see Ethiopia attack. We're going to see Iran attack. We're going to see Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, all of these Magog regions that are in Central Asia. We're going to see them all come against Israel. But what's interesting is Saudi Arabia will not. As a matter of fact, Saudi Arabia will be very vocal in their dissent against what is actually happening, and it will put a stop to nothing because they won't be doing anything militaristically speaking, but God himself will actually stop all of these people from attacking Israel, and we know that that destruction will be great. But if you see these things beginning to materialize right now, it should open up your eyes to recognize and understand that more than ever, we are in these days. We're watching it all happen, and it's something that should keep our eyes open. So this is what you do. Keep your eyes open. Pay attention to what's going on right now in the region. Pay attention to what's happening in Iran. Pay attention to what's happening in Russia. Pay attention to what's happening in Libya. Pay attention to what's happening in the Arabian Peninsula. Pay attention to regime changes that takes place, right? If MBS comes in as king, which he will very likely very soon, pay attention to Khomeini and who he is going to put in office as the permanent president to replace Raisi. Pay attention to who the new foreign minister will be. Pay attention to what's going to happen with the IRGC. There are so many things to take a look at because it's going to bring great effect into what we see happening as the stage is being set for Ezekiel 38. Folks, we're seeing lots of these things happening. Now, I believe Ezekiel 38 happens after the rapture. When does the rapture happen? I don't know, right? The Bible tells us that we're not to know. But this is all stuff that is interesting to watch begin to formulate. And the geopolitics, we're not going to be able to get wrong if we base our conclusions on what the Bible tells us. So all this stuff is happening. It's super interesting. Let's pay attention because God's doing something huge here. All right? God bless you guys. We love you.